exhibition on Ferrophile. It is a software-based exhibition. Each project is generative art, like you've come to know and love, computer-based artwork. Each artist created their own algorithm, which creates 144 unique artworks. And then each of those artworks are grouped by token ID and sold in sets. I'll talk some more about that later. Everything is on Ethereum. The code is not on-chain, it's zipped. That means you have the capability to recreate everything, to recreate your artwork. Everything that's needed to do so is packaged up in a zip file. So truly a software-based exhibition. Anyways, a collection begins on July 20th. It's open for viewing now. I highly recommend going to ferrophile.com, checking out some of the works. These artists have been working together for the past 7 months or so. So the key idea for N equals 12 is that these artists have been working in sort of close quarters for the past several months. We've had weekly calls. We've had a private Discord server where everyone is sharing their artwork and code and asking questions and getting ideas. We've done artist critiques a little more formally. The idea is to lean into the networked experience of creating artwork in modern times and focus on that intentionally. There's this quote that I love from Frieder Nake that says, "Artists engage in wonderfully silent conversations, whether they know it or not." And the point of the show is to basically highlight those conversations, focus them, make them audible. So I've asked these artists to work together in this way, and they've done so and created some amazing works. Super excited to share them with you. Just to run down the list of the 12 artists across 7 time zones, we have Lucia, Nicole, Vella, ippsketch, Coleman, Daniel Catt, Catt, RalenArc, Elsif, Peter Pasma, Nadieh Bremer, Bart Simmons, Reva Fan, and Melissa Wiederrecht. It was absolutely wonderful working with them. Part of N equals 12 is launching Ferrophile 2.0. So I assume some of y'all are familiar with Ferrophile, but I would love to hand it over to Ferrophile's own Elizabeth Sweet to tell us a little bit more about what's going on over there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Aaron. Thank you for having us today. My colleague Casey's trying to get in, but he can't get in. So anyway, he's either here in spirit or will join later. But as Aaron mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Sweet. I'm the communications lead at Ferrophile. I know some of you as well from my other role as the community manager at the Verse, and I'm really excited to be here. So thanks so much for inviting us. Talk about N equals 12. It's seriously such a special exhibition. And we're so excited that it launches Ferrophile 2.0. So just a bit about Ferrophile 2.0, because we are changing a lot of the drop mechanics and the things like the viewing period and the collecting period and the post-collecting period, which I'll get into here in a second. So first, okay, also this is my very first time using Discord as a chat like this. So excuse me if I look like I don't know what I'm doing. So I think, is the Grailers Cafe where I should drop links to things, Aaron? Is that right? Because there's no chat.
So.
Okay, great. So right now I'm going to drop in the Grailers Cafe the exhibition itself. And so you can take a look. We have a whole new website, a whole new gallery, and we're super excited to feature N equals 12 there. So do take a look and feel free to take a look while I'm chatting. So go ahead. Someone doing? No? Okay. Great. So in Ferrophile 2.0, the exhibition set is the collectible. So every set is unique and contains one unique artwork by each artist in the exhibition. So if you go on the site, you'll see a scroll bar on the right side, and you can see each of the 144 sets that have been curated for this exhibition. And so when you collect a set, like set number 5, for instance, you'd receive Super Boom number 5 by Elsif, Emergence number 5 by Coleman, Oscillation 2 number 5 by Lucia, etc. And so to head off some questions, because we've been saying like the exhibition is the asset, that's not like technically true. Basically, like the set is indicated in the metadata, but when you collect, you'll receive 12 individual NFTs, 12 individual artworks, 12 individual tokens. So it's not a strict bundle. And once you collect, you have the prerogative to do whatever you want with the set, and with each piece within the set. It is something that we're trying to make really clear, which we realize maybe hasn't been as clear before. So if you have any questions, please do please feel free to reach out. And
That
so,
means, Elizabeth, just to clarify, that means each artwork is its own ERC 721, right? So when you buy a set, you buy 12 721s.
correct. Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you. And so we're doing this for a couple of reasons. For like a lot of reasons, but I'll just talk about two of the biggest ones. So the first one is to increase artist equity as far as earning goes. So each artist receives the same amount from every single sale. So each set is divided equally between the artists. And one of the core values of Feral File is to exhibit emerging artists alongside established artists. And so this is really important to us to sort of, to create and foster the spirit of equity. And value. So that's one of the reasons. And then the other reason is to really preserve the curatorial vision. If you haven't taken a look at the curatorial statement, I highly recommend doing so. It's profound and it's beautiful. And Aaron mentioned Frieder Nake earlier, and that really ties into the exhibition as a whole. And when you look at the whole set in and of itself, it really captures it. And so we think that selling the exhibition as a set as opposed to individual pieces helps preserve the curatorial vision. And then we are doing something like with our viewing period, something that's a little bit new. The viewing period is 1 week. So we opened the show last Thursday. So it's been open for several days, and it's been really exciting to hear people's thoughts and reactions and feelings about seeing the sets as a whole. We think it's like just a really special model, and we're really excited that the artists in N=12 have been so enthusiastic about it. So thank you all so much. It's been great to see online and in Discord, just sort of the energy and excitement around that. And so during this time, we welcome collectors, artists, and the community to come in and to really spend time with the exhibition sets and to see which ones they prefer and for what reasons. And you really start to get a feel of the entire exhibition when you look at each set in and of themselves and then compare them with each other. And I mentioned that it's important to like review each set because during the collecting period, for the collecting period, we've significantly shortened it. So it's only 24 hours. So you only have 24 hours to collect the sets that you want. And it starts at 7.2 ETH for N=12. So on Thursday at 1400 UTC, the auction will begin at 7.2 ETH, and then over the course of 30 minutes, it will incrementally fall to the resting price of 0.72. So in those first 30 minutes, you have the option to bid and to collect the set that you want at that price that the auction is currently at. So if you know your favorite set, you know which one you want, you go in early and you get it. After that, for the next 23.5 hours, all the sets will cost 0.72 ETH, and collectors can also choose which ones they want. From there, it's not, you still get to select, but the one that you want might have gone earlier. So that is something new that we're trying out. And then the final thing that I'll mention is that we are trying out this new post-collecting period. So after the exhibition, and this tends to be the case where after an exhibition, there's just sort of this drop, and people maybe don't talk about the work as much, or there's not a lot of reflection on the pieces. And so we really want to reflect on the artwork and on what collecting was like for the artists and for the collectors and for the community. So we're reserving the week after the collecting period to really do this. And so we're going to have a post-collecting conversation on Twitter on July 25th. And I'm also going to drop that in the chat. Let me toggle to it. I'll drop it after because I have to type some things. Sorry, and I can't type and talk at the same time. So that'll be a nice time to speak with collectors and with artists. About their experience in the collecting period and throughout the exhibition in general. So just like kind of a nice little wrap up reflection, and then that's kind of all of Feral File 2.0 in a very quick nutshell. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm also going to drop a video in the Grailers chat that features Casey Reas, our co-founder, and Sean Moss-Poltz, our other co-founder of Feral File. And it gives a little bit of a breakdown and rundown of what we're doing and why. So you can get some more context there. And then always feel free to reach out either to the Feral File Twitter or Instagram, or to me, my Twitter is Species of Value. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And thank you all for your time and for listening.
Thanks for all the details, Elizabeth. Love it. Another thing that's interesting to mention about Ferrophile, I think, is that they have work that has been collected and showcased by MoMA, the Centre Pompidou, LACMA, Buffalo AKG, and the Whitney. So it's a lot of fun to see folks who have been in the digital art space for the past 20, 30 years, like Casey Reas and the team, bringing that experience to bear through Ferrophile, whereas a lot of platforms go kind of the opposite direction. We're technologists and we're trying to bring that interesting side into the art world. So it's kind of a fun way to learn from each other. I had some questions for the artist, if you guys don't mind. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this experience is all of the artists working together and kind of becoming, friends, becoming colleagues, becoming influencers of each other's work in one way or another, and kind of opening themselves up to share their work earlier in the process than they normally would, and being vulnerable in this kind of like trusting environment. It's kind of a scary thing. Nicole, you had a really good example, I think, of either shifting direction, through your, process. You're kind of trying out a few different ideas and ended up honing in on an idea based on group kind of feedback and implicit direction. Would love if you could give an overview of your experience.
Yeah, so we met regularly, weekly or bi-weekly, every other week for the past 7 months. So we had a lot of face-to-face time where we had the chance to share our work and our progress that we've made. And I don't know, maybe it was halfway through that period, 3 months in, where I had a handful of distinct paths that I could go down, and I wasn't really sure which path to go down. I kind of didn't necessarily feel like I was sitting at a dead end, but I just didn't know which way to go or which idea to push further. And it was during one of those group sessions where I showed a work in progress that wasn't even one of the handful that I had just mentioned. It was from another project many months ago. And I thought we had hit a dead end with that one. But I think it was Peter or Dan that mentioned that it's really interesting and you should pursue that path because it was very visually interesting and the concept behind it was intriguing. So that's kind of how I landed on the final piece that I pushed to the end, was with that encouragement from Peter and Dan. And if it wasn't for these constant face-to-face meetings and insights that I didn't have from other people, then I wouldn't have sorry, I'm rambling, then I wouldn't have gone down the path that I went down.
But you also got, I think, one of the coolest names in this set. But I shouldn't say coolest, I should say the most profound. Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of Text Me When You Get Home?
Yeah, so my piece revolves around, in the past, like I said, it wasn't the piece that I ended up with wasn't one that I initially wanted to put in the show, but in the past year, I've been dealing a lot with interpersonal relationships and relationships ending and forming and meeting new people and people exiting my life. And it's been a very turbulent year in that respect. So that's where my mindset was at when I was creating the piece. There's these two distinct entities, are they pulling together? Are they pulling apart or are they coming together? You don't really know. It's kind of based on the idea that within our relationships and the people that we meet in life, you either grow together or you grow apart. That's kind of the concept I wanted to encompass with this artwork. And I was at a friend's place and I had no idea what to name it. I was thinking, should I name it Cling? Do I name it Hold? Do I name it Goodbye? Do I name it something more abstract or something more literal, like glass or something like melt or something like that? And I had a conversation with Aaron about these two directions. Should I use something literal or should I use something more closer to my heart? Because a few days prior to that, I was at a friend's place, and as I was leaving my friend's place, they poked their head out the door and they said, "Text me when you get home so that I know you're safe." The subtext there is so that I know you're safe. And when they said that to me, it really struck a chord and it really resonated with me. And it immediately made me think of my artwork. And that's the exact message I wanted to express with my artwork. Text me when you get home. This idea of connecting with someone and either gaining that connection or losing that connection over time. And then through this conversation with Aaron really encouraged me, go with your heart, go with the one that strikes a chord within you the most, and go with that as the name of your artwork. It speaks more than just something more literal like glass or melt. So that's the story behind the name. Text me when you get home. I absolutely love the name.
I also love the name. I wanted to ask Daniel, I really enjoyed seeing your process evolve because you started with what I would consider like familiar RevGAN Catt territory of large blocks of color and geometric shapes kind of interacting in these interesting patterns and interesting ways. And then you took a couple of detours throughout the process and landed on this just absolutely stellar animated work inspired by a glitchy Pac-Man bug and showcasing generative poetry and generative faces and skulls, and it's just an incredible piece. I would love to hear maybe what influenced you from the group to pivot direction, or what sort of comfort you felt to be able to do so.
Yeah, it was kind of, excuse me, sorry. It was kind of a flashback to being at university when you had to do those critique sessions, but your score depended on it, like your ability to actually pass the course. So you'd really have to blag it. You'd say, you'd kind of retrofit your argument for where you've ended up. And also, like, I remember quite a few projects at university where I was like, oh, this is definitely the idea behind it. And in the back of my head, I was going, nah, you're just trying to kid the teacher. And I suspect they knew. And when I was in these critique sessions, I kind of had the same feeling. I wasn't trying to do the same thing, but I had an idea, and then I was kind of trying to justify it. And then I was going, I don't feel like I need to justify it to my friends, because deep down, I know it's not right. And as I'm talking now, saying, oh, well, this is the thinking behind it, I can feel myself sort of falling into that pattern of not truly believing in it myself. And then watching other people change their things and getting feedback from other people, it felt like a really safe environment to sort of go, actually, I don't think that I'm fully behind what I'm trying to do here. I really love what I'm doing, and it definitely is going to go somewhere, but I don't think it's right for this group show. And also being in a group show allowed me to explore an area that I'm not so well known for, not so much the graphic design, but to do like this animated piece, well, more specifically a non-print piece. Most of my work ends up printed like either by a pen plot or from a printer, and this piece very much isn't that. And again, it was being within the group show and the scaffolding we have around that and the support around it, and File itself, the fact that it's going on to File meant I felt comfortable throwing old things away, and that there'll be a place for this one. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but it suddenly threw me back about 20 years from trying to lie to my design teacher and then going, yeah, I don't need to do that.
I love the idea of lying to the design teacher. That's good. I think you mentioned something around being comfortable, maybe seeing other folks create their work and instilling a certain level of confidence that maybe you can do actually whatever the hell you want. You're not confined to doing a certain type of artwork. You have this sort of safety of working within a group, and so you can experiment a little bit and branch out a little bit.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that we have as a group of artists, because there is that imposter syndrome, and then to suddenly be in a group of like 11 of you who sort of don't really know what you're doing, and then Peter, who does know what he's doing, was kind of comforting. And you could expose that bit, going, really, I've tried these two things, and I don't quite know what I'm doing. And people to go, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing either. But that was okay. That's part of the process right at the beginning. It's okay to not know what you're doing. Whereas when you're talking on Twitter, when you're presenting on Twitter or social media, you're kind of expected to have this air of confidence, like every move you make is well thought out and there's good rationale behind it. So to be able to quickly iterate through ideas and not be solitary, not be on your own, sort of expose them to other people, I think was great. But it was certainly the vulnerability which I think came through both on the technical side and also the emotional side as well. Like the last 7 months has been a bit of a weird space for NFT. So being able to talk about how we were feeling emotionally as well as technology, I think was really useful. And again, I think that comes through in the work for quite a lot of us.
Definitely. I think one of the projects that really came through, at least from my perspective, was Leah, your project Emergence. You incorporated these elements of your family history and your own sort of lineage, but also more in a technical side that was very interesting. You brought in some AI components, some style GAN, still in a very creating your own models and training your own models way, but that's obviously the topic du jour. I'm curious, since you have so much experience as a researcher and educator in this AI space, if you can give us some insight into how that combined with your generative art practice.
Yeah, I think because I think like it feels like I'm always straddling these two halves of myself, like the AI technical person, but then also the really like like the artist inside of me, where it kind of feels like there are certain things that I can't express verbally, and they just have to be expressed through like creating like visual art. And so like for this series Emergence, it's really about like these ideas I've been thinking about I'm a second generation like Chinese American. So my parents immigrated from China in like the 80s and 70s. And basically like thinking about this process of trying to figure out my family history, like you know, like the diaspora immigration patterns of like being in the United States, my family a generation ago being in China, but then also just even if I try to dig generations before that, it's just like completely like there's no information, or it's just kind of like lost due to time and just like the passage of history. And so this piece is about it's using a data set of Chinese paper cuts that I collected. So that kind of felt like an archival process of like trying to like recollect the past, like scrounge together what bits exist in the present of the entire like infinite past. And then I put this through a style GAN model, and I allowed that to train for about 4 days on like 4 NVIDIA GPUs. And then each of the pieces from the set comes out at a different moment in time of the training process. So it's sort of like the entire set of like 144 pieces. It's kind of like they're all like part of the same family tree, where like past generations influence current generations and future generations. But like they're all kind of like tied together by the same visual language, by like the same DNA and the same overall like ancestry. And so it's like all about about this like very personal experience I have of my lineage and the ancestors that came before me. And the ways in which like this sort of ties to n equals 12 as a whole is like it's about the collective and about like honoring or paying homage to your influences, like those who came before you, your contemporaries, like the 11 other artists who are in this exhibition, and also just it just feels like there's like this invisible, really comforting, unknown support from these invisible influences that are all around us, both familial and like artistic and in all these other ways. So it's really about the idea of like all of us being like together as a collective.
I love that sort of confluence of different influences that lead to the output that you kind of distill yourself. You're taking these things from the past, from your youth, from your current moment with these other peers, and creating some alchemy with them in one moment. It's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very good. I wanted to take a second kind of detour back to the curatorial statement just to set some more context before I ask y'all some more questions. Let me actually drop some links here. So the curatorial statement is an essay that I wrote with help from many folks, including a lot of folks here in Grailers. Thank you to everybody. I think there was like 4 or 5 of y'all that helped me edit and tighten this up. But if you check out the PDF, let me those. Yeah, sorry, proper. The middle link here, n=12 exhibition catalog PDF. I also PDFs can be a scam vector, so if you're not comfortable clicking that link, DM me. I'm happy to make sure you get it. Or you can read the curatorial statement at the exhibition link, which is the top link here. But let me just read the first paragraph for you. n=12 is an experiment in building intentional community with 12 artists collaborating across 7 time zones. Contemporary computer-based artists create their work while connected to an effectively infinite network of information. This affords artists the capacity for infinite input and collaboration, leaving them to distill these disparate connections and experiences into their artwork, much like what Leo was just describing. Distinctly, the computer artist's principal tool for creation is also a means for connection. Right, you're using these computers to create something in your studio late at night by yourself, and it also happens to be the thing that connects you to the entire world. So n=12 leans into the inherent proximity of computer users by explicitly asking these 12 artists to create work while in constant dialogue with one another. In doing so, the show makes audible the wonderfully silent conversations between artists that Frieder Nake referred to in his foreword to Casey Reas' Century Catalog of 2012. Frieder Nake was talking about wonderfully silent conversations between artists, meaning the sort of implicit influence that happens over generations. Maybe you as a young artist are creating something thinking it's your own and it's very new and exciting, and then later come to realize it was on the same wavelength as something someone did 50 years ago. So the idea here is, hey, we're all kind of on the same wavelength. Let's focus it and see what comes of it. And I think it's been really, really exciting to see the output. Peter, I wanted to ask you about balls to the wall. I want to caveat, I learned what balls to the wall comes from. The etymology of that phrase is from airplanes. Throttle sticks have handles shaped like spheres, and you shove them forward to accelerate, and you shove them forward to the wall of instruments, hence balls to the walls. Anyways, I really, really love, Peter, how you were able to take this sort of like alien feel, this sort of dark, menacing, mysterious kind of world and create these generative camera angles and walls and these sphere-packed objects. Would love for you to bless us with your wizardry and tell us more about the project.
Yeah, so let's see. It started out during January, actually, where I sort of stumbled during one day at I was experimenting, I think, with the shadows prompt that day, which also resulted in an FX hash project, by the way, called In Between. And I'll put a link to it later in the chat. And I was experimenting with shaders, and this really weird type of shading with like bleeding colors came out, and I was thinking like, I don't have time to pursue this angle right now, but I gotta save it. So I saved it, and a couple of months later, this group project started, and I was thinking like, I gotta have something cool, and I remembered this thing, so I made a lot of changes to it, and there's also in my other FX hash project, which I'll also link, called Geomorphism, I found a new way to generate like interesting camera angles in ray traced scenes, and I'll spare the technical details, but basically it is able to generate a whole lot of random camera angles and check if certain things are in view or if there's a lot of shadow or things, and then discard those random camera angles where something is not in view or there's too much shadow. Yeah, that's a system that I'm using for this project, Balls to the Walls. Another thing is that I'm using something called sphere packing, which is see, there's this generative art algorithm called circle packing, and it creates these very cool fractal-like textures. And I always wondered what that would look like in 3D if you would pack spheres using that algorithm instead. And it's not a very large amount of spheres, but it creates this really cool alien-looking clump. And yeah, I didn't want to give a lot of backstory because I like sort of the mystery. There's, I guess, a lot of... See, there's this movie called Cube. And there's like, I think 6 people in an infinite maze of cubicle rooms, some of which are death traps, and they don't know why they're there. And the reason why they're there, I won't spoil, but it's really cool. And there's this thing about how it was shot. It was only one room, or 1.5 cubicle room, and they used lights to suggest this infinite maze. And I'm sort of doing the same thing here, where I'm using one model for the room that kind of changed. Sorry, did you want to ask something? Oh, all right. So yeah, it's kind of like the same room every time, but it's got different colors and it's got different shapes. Well, it's got the same shape, but it's got different dimensions because of reasons. And so it suggests a lot of different rooms. And to me, they all feel like these are rooms very, very far away from Earth. Maybe in space and time, but I don't know. That's just a feeling that I get.
Yeah, I think that feeling is conveyed pretty well. That not alien necessarily, but strange, distant, not familiar.
Yeah, and I tried to come up with another title, but Balls to the Walls, it just kept coming up in my head. And also thanks to the group for telling me that's a good title. So I went with it.
I was pushing you back on it. I was like, I don't know about this title. Then thankfully I Googled around and figured out what it means. So it's okay. I love it.
Yeah.
I think I like as well how you've incorporated these 2 color palettes, one for the background and one for the subject. It's kind of interesting to see both being strange color palettes but interacting well. That's a very difficult feat in generative art, is to use these sorts of generative colors. Do you have anything to share there?
Well, yeah, first off, I only had one color palette at first, and it was ippsketch idea. He said, can you also give like the balls and the walls a different color? And I hadn't really thought of that. So that's one, really awesome piece of inspiration that came from this group collaboration. And I was surprised that, because I'm basically picking 2 random color palettes from a set of 60. If you like, they all got names, by the way. This is a little Easter egg. If you open the browser console in the live version, you can see the names of each, or the particular 2 names of the 2 color palettes it uses for the balls and the walls. And I think they work well together because I generated a whole lot of color palettes from sort of random distribution formulas in linear RGB, which works a little bit better. And then they are also like shaded according to sort of not even close to physically realistic way, but because they're all shaded in the same way, it's like interesting how it's the colors tend to really fit together.
Very good. Also, that reminds me, thinking of colors fitting together, Elsif, you had a very interesting approach to the idea of 144 pieces. You created one large landscape and sliced it basically into 144 fragments and created this one beautiful whole artwork. Would love for you to tell us more about that. And Elsif, if you're still on mute, I can share for you.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to say hi and listen into this call mostly. So I'm actually on a beach right now. It's pretty noisy here. Oh, actually, I found this. All right. So I'll share a little bit about the artwork. So yeah, at the very beginning, when I got invited to this show, I was super excited and I was fascinated by this idea of connections. And I always thought long form generative art, it's kind of unique in the sense that each piece belongs to a connection and just belongs to a bigger collection. And it feels bigger than itself, right? Like owning something part of a long form generative series it feels like you kind of own a part of the whole series. And with Super Bloom, with this project, when I learned that we know the edition number of the artwork before we mint it, I got this idea that, I can make all the pieces connect together. So it highlights this even more that, everything is bigger than itself and it's part of a whole long continuous artwork. So I'm sorry I have to go, but yeah, Aaron, if you want to share more about my artwork, I'd be very grateful. And thanks.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, thank you. Enjoy the beach. One of the things also shared is that this landscape, and if you've ever been on the coast of California, you probably recognize it right away. But when you're driving up and down the coast of California on the 101 or PCH, whatever you want to call it, this is a pretty common view. These beautiful flowers, beautiful bluff, and a beautiful ocean in the distance with him in clouds in the background. I agree, Ice Moon. The Super Bloom event is a real event. I didn't realize this until Elsif explained it to me, but apparently every several years there's certain conditions where there's dormant seeds and a good amount of rain, and then a natural event where flowers bloom en masse, and they call it a super bloom, and that's what's represented here. So basically each one of this website that I've linked in the chat is really cool, also showing each of the tokens from n equals 12 laid side by side and rotating. It's actually really relaxing, mesmerizing view. Speaking of relaxing, Melissa, I would love to ask you, if you're up for it, to share a bit about how you took your traditional, the style that you're known for, I suppose, is very like textural, very dynamic, very, I want to say, maximalist approach to evoking emotion and texture and form, and bringing it down, distilling it, stripping it to its very essence in order to create your project, Beautiful Silence. And if you're on mute or don't want to speak, that's no problem. I'm happy to share about it. I see you typing, Melissa, so wait a second. No worries, no worries. I can share for you if that's all right. Once you get it figured out, just jump in and interrupt me. One thing I saw was actually Melissa and Jeff ippsketch had a similar approach, but in parallel, of course, where the initial artworks were very crowded at all, but very full of texture, very full of detail and nuance, kind of busy feeling. There's like a lot of activity happening. And both of these artists reduced their work over the course of months to a more minimalist composition, which is a feat. It's a very challenging thing to do. Melissa's in particular was this sort of like ocean scene with all of these little dots and textural stuff that you're familiar with if you've seen Melissa's work. And at the time, she was dealing with a lot of very intense personal stuff, some global issues that were hitting home, some personal art career things, just a lot of things that were very causing a lot of busyness and activity in her life. And she was really hoping and striving and looking for some solace. So that very real journey over a couple months came through in the process works that she shared with the group. Every week they would get distilled and reduced. So very, very powerful to see an artist convey their own sort of personal evolution through the artwork's evolution. And the end result, fortunately, is this absolutely glorious gradient-filled scene with these soft colors that it just immediately calms you and lets you sort of relax into this beautiful silence. Thanks, Melissa, for sharing your work with us. Right on. I haven't asked anything else. Very good. RalenArc, I think you're the other artist here that I haven't asked any questions to. Ralen just did a project with Proper's platform and created some ordinals. She also just dropped on Art Blocks recently and has been working on this project for the past 7 months. So Ralen, you've been just incredibly busy. Would love to hear some of the influence that went into your work. I know there's some watercolor from your painting practice. There's some Japanese quilt textures that you've incorporated. Would love to hear more from you about it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having us. My project was inspired from the Boro quilt. So initially, actually, I started with some initial ideas, but I didn't satisfy like what I want to create for this group show. Then when I came across Boro quilt, I was like, I started more know about how they started. So Boro quilt actually it's started in 1700s, and they have rectangular pages they put together, and they have different pattern on. In my artwork, I inspired from the Boro quilt, and in my artwork, like Taslet, they have rectangular pages. They are connected. They have different color and pattern. So actually, it's I would say like it's represent our group show also. Like we have artists have different backgrounds, different styles. So and also like I did drop with Imagine.art. I would say like team is amazing. They are very supportive, and they helped me out to onboarding on ordinals. So it was a very nice experience.
Very good. We should have another chat at some point about ordinals. Whenever someone asks me about ordinals, I point them to Proper and Imagine.art. And now that you've gone through that experience, I think it'd be fun to hear a little bit more about it at some future point. I was trying to get a picture, though, of your works in progress. You shared your sketchbook, it's always fascinating to me to see artists' sketchbooks. Do you normally work from pencil and paper before going into code?
Actually, I took inspiration from real world, so I make the sketches, and that is like my inspiration in my sketchbook. So every time I make a sketch and implement it in my code, like how all the components get together work well. And also in Taslet, I use watercolor texture, which is inspired from my traditional art experience, which I do from more than 15 years now. So
Very good. Thanks for sharing. Anna, looks like you joined. Let me see if you're still here. Yep, you are. Wonderful. If you're able to chat, I know you're jumping in and out. I would love to hear about your project Oscillation 2. First of all, what does the 2 mean? And how did you feel creating an animated piece? And what influences did the group have on you? please share as much as you can.
Yeah, hi, Aaron. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that I've still been able to join this call, albeit a bit later. It's called Oscillations 2 or Oscillation 2. And there is a perpetual oscillations, which I kind of see as my oscillation number one, a project that I fixed hash already almost 1.5 years ago. And before we just got started with this project, I wanted to do something a lot more in the direction of Nicole's work or Peter's work, and this has been something that I've been practicing with and dabbling with, and I thought, hey, I'm in this group show, there's these 2 people, and like other people, I can start asking them all questions, and I can read something in them, and I started on that, and I noticed that I was really, because it was a new technique, but I felt like I'm doing this technique now, but I can only still kind of replicate or just learning a new skill. You're practicing your skills, but I wasn't really able to compose my own symphonies yet. So being in this group and looking at that, I was like, man, I do want to create a symphony here. So I, kind of similar to Dan's story, I decided to really, go a different direction and go kind of like to a place where I'm already more comfortable and expand from that. So where I know like I can really create my own kind of artistic thing and see if I can even push that further out. So that's kind of where Oscillation 2 come from. And the inspiration and something that I've been playing with already for, I would say, a year or longer, is this idea of almost like ambient graphics, very inspired by the music by Brian Eno and his kind of like early ambient works, where he tried to make music that was ignorable almost, or it has these and the way that he builds up his music is kind of these different loops that are overlapping on different wavelengths. And that's exactly also what oscillations, perpetual oscillations are, but also here in Oscillation 2, I'm playing with these techniques again of like these different wavelengths that are flowing in and out with each other, creating these kind of meditative animations. So, yeah.
Wonderful. As someone who is obsessed with Brian Eno's music and the phasing ideas of bringing these like slowly moving elements in and out of each other, I think you've captured it exceptionally well. The fact that you have these sort of like pulsing rectangles with these more swooping organic shapes, some dithered, some blocks of color, it just really creates this compelling effect that makes your eye move around yet settle into sort of like an ambient place, which I feel like you've set as the goal. So I think you've achieved it.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel also it's a little bit, still challenging myself and not being too comfortable. And I think I always like working with kind of like strict geometries and rectangles, and in this way, kind of seeing them disintegrate a little bit more was, a lot of fun to work on.
Wonderful. We're almost at a full hour. I really appreciate everybody hanging out so long. If you guys have questions or comments or want to ask any of the artists anything, feel free to just jump off mute and interrupt, or drop a message in the Grailers Cafe chat. While y'all think of questions, I'll share a little bit more context just from some notes here. The reason, the meaning behind n = 12 is that this is a sampling of 12 artists working in this way. And this sampling of 12 artists comes from the Generative Artists Club. It's a group that I formed with 50 other artists back in 2018, just to have a place where we could all talk shop, share secrets, support each other, the kinds of things you need when you're an artist out on the internet. It's now grown to over 600 artists and includes all the folks that you're familiar with across the NFT space and generative art space at large. It's just an example of artist aggregating. This has happened before so many times, right? The Dadaists in the 1910s, the Fluxus group in the 60s, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but the Badagnolles group in the 1870s. There's been a lot of folks coming together, and this is just one example. And that group of 600 artists is itself a subset, of course, of the larger community of computer-based artists, and even larger community of computer users and larger community of artists at large. So it's just this onion of populations. What we wanted to do was take a very focused group of creatives and see what a very intense, Melissa, intentional, focused Gen Art Club could produce, and how we could influence each other implicitly or explicitly. Let's see here. Okay, so there's a few, since I don't have any more questions, I'll hit the last few notes. We're going to be doing a walkthrough, and actually maybe, Elizabeth, I'll pass it to you to help share about what the walkthrough for the exhibition is, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And thank you again. It's like every conversation we have, I just learn more and more about these pieces, and I just fall more and more in love. So thank you all so much for sharing about the work again today. It's been really great to be here and to be here with you all. Tomorrow we're having a walkthrough, as Aaron said, an exhibition walkthrough. It's on Zoom. I dropped the registration link to the Eventbrite in the Grailers chat, and a lot of you I've reached out to over DM, and so I really appreciate you registering already, and for your energy and enthusiasm around that. We're really excited. Our co-founder Sean Moss-Pultz is going to be there to kind of give a rundown, kind of similar to what I did today, but a little bit more in depth about the new mechanics and about the set collecting and all of that. So we're going to start out with just some of that at the top, and then dive into the artwork again, talk about the sets, kind of look at them all together, and discuss. And we also are going to have a Q&A session at the end, which we would love for you to bring questions based on what you've heard today, what you hear tomorrow, curiosities that you have maybe about how we're doing things, all of that. So I'm really looking for it to be kind of like just like an open discussion, a lot of appreciation of the artwork. And so that's tomorrow at 4 p.m. UTC, which, sorry, please convert that to your time zone. This is what we use at Feral File. So please join us. And I dropped the the Eventbrite link in the chat. So feel free to register through that if you haven't. And thanks to those of you who have.
Perfect. Thanks, Elizabeth. Just to clarify some of the mechanics Proper asked about. So it is kind of a unique, it is very much a unique approach to collecting. Some of these details will be shared more in the Twitter threads from Feral File that are linked above with some of the logistics. But the idea is that these are basically, the way I'm thinking about it, my biased perspective, is we have 12 artists who created 12 basically parallel art blocks drops or projects. We've pre-minted all of them and then grouped all of the same token IDs. So Peter's token ID 15 has a unique hash. Melissa's token ID 15 has a separate unique hash. Those are grouped into a single set as set 15. And so when you see, that's why the exhibition needs to have this viewing period, so you can go through and browse and say, oh, I really like this set, that set, and the other. So you go into the auction knowing which ones you're targeting, because you're able to pre-select which set you want to go for and lock in your collection at the price that you're comfortable with as the price is dropping. Proper pointed out, it's first come, first serve. The price is dropping, it's highest bid per set, therefore it's the first bid that comes in on a given set. So if you see a set that has maybe something interesting, some visually compelling aesthetics, some combination of things, maybe a rarity, whatever it is that draws you to a particular set, it's in your best interest to get at it first before someone else does. And you collect the whole set, all 12 pieces. Like we said before, each of the artworks is a unique ERC 721. So when you join the exhibition and purchase a set, you're collecting 12 NFTs at once. Yes, the price,
Yes,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'll handle it. Yeah, so the price that is shown in the auction is basically, you divide that by 12 to get the price for each of the artworks. It's definitely an interesting thing having 12 artists sold together. Like Elizabeth said, that hits on some very important characteristics of what Ferrophile sees as important, such as artist equity and elevating emerging artists in companionship with more established artists, and all these other very important things that come from the Ferrophile lineage of supporting artists at large. So I think it's a really compelling and interesting mechanic. I'm excited to see how it plays out. But yes, the price you'll see is the price for all 12 tokens, and each of those tokens are a unique artwork from these 12 artists' amazing artworks. Cool. Thanks, Proper. And thanks, everybody, for joining. It's been a ton of fun sharing. Obviously, go to ferrophile.com, check out the exhibition, follow the artists, dive in, and ask as many questions as you could possibly ask. I'll be monitoring all the different channels, so ask whatever. It's been a joy sharing this with you guys. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Yo.